Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be continuing in our series, Faith That Works. This is going to be the second episode in that series, and we're going to be looking at the question, can our faith grow? And if it can grow, how does our faith actually grow? So take a look. I hope that it blesses you and it gives you something to continue on in your faith journey as you walk with Jesus. Peter trusts Jesus. He steps out onto the boat and onto water. For a moment, he's actually walking on water. But then he begins to look around at the wind and the waves, and suddenly fear grips him and he begins to sink. Peter cries out, "Lord, help me." That sounds familiar to us because we can relate with that kind of faith journey. Some days it's, "Lord, I trust you," and we step out into faith. And other days it feels like we're sinking under the pressure. And so the question becomes, can faith grow? Or am I stuck with the level of faith that I have today? The Bible actually shows us that our faith isn't meant to stay the same. It's actually supposed to grow. In the book of 2 Thessalonians, Paul gives thanks for the believers. Why? Well, because their faith and love continue to grow even in the midst of persecution. So faith doesn't just grow in the easy seasons, it also grows in the difficult seasons, and yes, even in persecution. The disciples in the book of Luke says to Jesus, "Lord, increase our faith." This shows us something really important, that faith can grow and it is meant to grow. In the book of Matthew, Jesus says that faith as small as a mustard seed can move mountains. The point wasn't that our faith should be small or that our faith would remain small. It's simply showing the power of faith, that even a small amount of faith can do spectacular things in your life. So yes, sometimes we have to start small, but our faith will not remain small. As we exercise it, it's supposed to grow. So here's what we often miss, that faith doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in the uncomfortable times of our lives where we are stretched to step out beyond what we can see or feel or understand. James actually said that the trying of our faith produces patience and maturity. So faith happens in moments like Peter had, where you have to step out in trust, even when it looks impossible. Moments where you choose to believe God and be obedient to His word, even when what's around you seem uncertain. Trusting God when life isn't really going that great. It's in moments like these that our faith will grow. We trust God. We step out in faith, even when it doesn't look like there's a reason to. This is when our faith begins to grow. By the way, every time we step out on faith, God will always prove Himself and His word to be true. So the stretching that you feel sometimes, the uncertainty that you may feel, the inconsistency sometimes, where some days it feels like your faith is huge and other days it feels like you've just got a little bit of faith. Maybe there's nothing actually wrong. Maybe it is that your faith is in a season of growth. Because when you begin to feel uncertain, when you begin to feel uncomfortable, when it begins to seem like taking the next step is beyond your understanding, these are the moments where faith really grows. So how do we make sure that we're growing in real life? Because growth is something that we have to be intentional about. If we're not intentional about our growth, we are not going to grow. So how do we make sure that we're doing that in real life every single day? Number one, step out in small faith. Step out in faith in the small things of life. Oftentimes we think we need to make these huge decisions to demonstrate our faith. But our faith is actually demonstrated on a day-to-day basis in the decisions that we make. Trust God in the small things, because small faith matters. Faith as small as a mustard seed can move mountains. Trust Him in your daily decisions. And actually, if we trust God on a day-to-day basis in our daily decision making, our thinking, all of these things, then we'll actually begin to make God decisions for our lives. And that's super huge. Next, don't be afraid of the stretching. Often when life begins to stretch us, we think that something is wrong and we lean out. But what happens is when we lean out, our faith begins to crumble. Negative thoughts begin to run around in our heads. We begin to question our faith and question God Himself. But when the stretching of life happens, if we can look at that as simply an opportunity for God to show up big in our lives, and as an opportunity for us to strengthen our faith, lean into it. Lean into the stretching. Lean into the difficulty, not away from it. Lean in to the hard places of life, knowing that that is where our faith is proven, and that is where our faith can grow. Next, feed your faith. We are all a product of what we have been fed. Take a plant. If you began to feed it chocolate and Pepsi, now I have never done this, but I'm guessing if we did, that plant would curl up and die pretty quickly. If our faith is going to grow, we need to feed it the spiritual food that is necessary for it to grow. We may struggle with fear, negative thought patterns. We may have a history of just curling up and making the wrong decision every time life gets a little bit tough. And in that kind of scenario, it's hard for faith to grow. But the minute we begin to feed on the Word of God, His Word becomes our strength. His Word replaces fear, and faith begins to grow as we trust Him and begin to walk out His Word bit by bit. The disciples said, "Lord, increase our faith." So we can pray, "Lord, increase my faith." That is actually a real prayer. I hope that you know that when you ask God to increase your faith, it means that you're going to also have to be willing to go through some things that creates the necessary environment for your faith to grow. Because unless you find yourself in a difficult spot where you have to trust God over what you see, how is your faith going to grow? It's when those moments where we find ourselves at a place of stepping into uncertainty and trusting God, or staying where we have always been and feel comfortable. It's in that moment that we either have the option to remain with a little bit of faith or allow God to increase our faith by stepping into uncertainty and trusting Him. But ask God, "Lord, increase my faith." And trust that even though the stretching may come, if we will lean into the stretching and trust God, He will bring us out of it in a greater way than we had been before. We will grow. Our faith will grow. Right now, it may feel like you're being stretched a little bit. It may look like things are just uncertain, and from one day to another, the level of your faith seems to be different. There's nothing wrong. Keep trusting God. Keep making one obedient decision after another. Because it's in the moment where it feels like you're being stretched that God begins to do His greatest work. So can our faith grow? Absolutely, it can. How does our faith grow? By feeding ourselves on the Word of God and allowing Him to take root within us and trusting Him one moment at a time, one decision at a time, and one stretching at a time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like and hit the subscribe button, and come back next time as we get into episode 3 of Faith That Works.